Hello, everyone. Jim Biringer here, Full Press Hockey. Please click that notify button, subscribe to the channel, like the video. We're talking about Toronto Maple Leafs. Round 2 against the Florida Panthers. What an abysmal performance by this Maple Leafs group in a must-win game after dropping games 3 and 4 down in Florida. After you're up 2-0 in the series, you're up 3-1 in game 3, and to have back-to-back performances like that, inexcusable in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. All or nothing. This was the biggest game for the core 4-5 in the history of this group. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again. Coach, bringing Craig Berube's got that calm, cool demeanor. You had Sheldon Keefe. Things didn't work out with Mike Babcock. They've had 2 playoff series wins since this group has been together. They've had 2 playoff series wins since 2004. They haven't been to a conference final since 2002. Something is up with this group. The makeup of this group is just not best defense this team has seen. The additions of Brandon Carlo. You had Tanev there. They're playing well. The depth scoring is there. Pacioretty, Nylander's been a monster for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs. And who do we point to always? 34-16, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. We thought Mitch Marner had gotten over the hump, plays at 4 Nations. He has that, he has the big points in overtime, set up the McDavid goal. He has the goal, assisted by Crosby in the first game. You thought, okay, he can carry that over in the Stanley Cup playoffs. First round against Ottawa looked fine. Same with Austin Matthews. But something is just not working against the Florida Panthers. You had a favorable matchup down in Florida against Brad Marchand, Anton Lundell, and Uftu Listerainen. Couldn't score. He's clearly injured, whether they want to admit it or not, or he wants to admit it or not, or the so-called Toronto insiders want to admit it or not. Austin Matthews is not 100%. It's clear he's got an upper body injury or an arm injury or something is going on, or the wrist is not healthy. Something is going on because his shot is not effective. He has 0 power play points. The power play is atrociously bad for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mark Savard, they wanted to bring him on. But immediately when Craig Berube was hired, everybody looked to Mark Savard as power play genius, and he potentially could be up for head coaching jobs. But you look on the ice, 0 goals for 34 in 10 career second-round playoff games. The demeanor has to change. William Nylander did his thing. Matthew Knies is emerging as a star. Joseph Woll is doing what he can. But the team in front of him is not helping. Yes, Anthony Stolarz is not there. Yes, this could be a different series if Anthony Stolarz is still in the net and what happened with Sam Bennett in Game 1. But Joseph Woll is playing well enough outside of Game 5, and it was a complete collapse by the Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 5. Again, it goes back to the turning point of this series. You can follow me at Jim Biringer on Twitter. Put it up there. Sergei Bobrovsky stops Matthew Knies. William Nylander, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner. He stops a ton of Toronto Maple Leafs in the third period because Bobrovsky, up until that point, had not had a great series. He didn't. He didn't have a great series in Game 1 or Game 2. The Toronto Maple Leafs won. And he didn't have a great start to Game 3. From that point on, the Toronto Maple Leafs had not scored a goal until about the 19-minute mark of period 3 of Game 5. So from the beginning of the second period in Game 3 to the end of Game 5, they had not scored a goal. Bobrovsky was in the zone. He stopped Knies multiple times in Game 4. He stopped Nylander multiple times in Game 4. Came up with the big saves, and the Toronto Maple Leafs wasted a great performance by Joseph Woll in Game 4. Tonight's inexcusable. There were a couple goals he should have kept, and he didn't. In Game 5, he shouldn't. There was a couple goals that he needs to stop, but he didn't. But again, early on, Sergei Bobrovsky robbed Nylander on a breakaway, robbed Knies. They robbed Matthew Knies again at the end of the first period with the Leafs on the power play. He came up with the big saves, which led to a goal. And again, it was bad turnover by Austin Matthews. in his own zone. Another turnover by Riley that led to the first goal by the Florida Panthers. The constant pressure of the Florida Panthers will make you create turnovers, and the Toronto Maple Leafs look like the Toronto Maple Leafs from the 2023 Stanley Cup Playoffs against the Florida Panthers, where Florida clogged up the neutral zone, did whatever they wanted, forechecked hard, caused turnovers. I don't know what Mitch Marner was doing on the third goal, behind the back pass that sets up the Jesper Boqvist goal to make it 3-0. Nico Mikkola walked in on Joseph Woll and scored. So the Toronto Maple Leafs have a lot of questions. This core group has a lot of questions to ask. Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner need to step their games up. It's win or go home now for the Toronto Maple Leafs against the Florida Panthers, and it most likely would be go home time because they have not shown anything in these last two games that they can compete with the Florida Panthers. In the first 3 games, they showed that they could compete with the Florida Panthers, and they had the champs on the ropes in Game 3, and they couldn't go up 3-0. Because if it's 3-0, it's a different series. We've seen teams come back from 3-0, but they usually run out of steam at the end of the series. Sometimes Philadelphia, we've seen LA come back from it, but it's hard to do because you have to play perfect for 4 straight games, and that's hard to do. But if Toronto goes up 3-0 again, maybe this is a different series. They didn't. They had chances. That's the turning point of the series. If Florida is able to close it out in Game 6, that's the difference. Them not going up 3-0 on the Florida Panthers. Yes, everybody wants to point to the Stolarz injury and what Bennett did and this and that. When you're up 3-0 in a series, it makes a big, big difference. Now the Maple Leafs have allowed the Florida Panthers to find their game. They found their game at the end of Game 1. They didn't win Game 2, the Panthers, but they found their game, and it reminded me of that Edmonton-Calgary series. Back in 2022, Edmonton lost Game 1, but they found a way to find their game at the end of the third period and carry it over in the rest of the series. Florida Panthers have found their game, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are trying to answer. Let's see if they can, because the legacy of this core 4 is definitely on the line. We know there's going to be massive changes this offseason. There has to be. We know Mitch Marner is a free agent. We know John Tavares is a free agent. Matthew Nye is a restricted free agent. Something has to change if they lose again in the playoffs. And does Brendan Shanahan go? You have a new GM. You brought in a new coach for this purpose. Can the Maple Leafs dig deep and find who they are and show everybody it is a different team? Or are they going to show it's the same old Toronto Maple Leafs come playoff time? When push comes to shove, they back down. Jim Biringer, Full Press Hockey. Again, subscribe to the channel, like the video. We'll be back again. Take care.